Whoa. Okay, let me level with you. This is big. Now, the polling industry, we are told, is this hugely important pillar of British democracy. Without needing to constantly send millions of people to polling stations on a daily basis to find out what they really think, we have this thing called the polling industry, which can find out in real time what people think about the world, who are they supporting in terms of political parties, which politicians they like, which politicians they don't like, what issues really matter to them. Now, in a general election campaign, they play a particularly important role. They tell us which parties got the momentum, which politicians are winning people over, who's going up, who's going down, what issues really matter to people. Now, that's instrumental in shaping the media narrative, the way the media cover a general election campaign. The idea that someone's got momentum, someone's winning people over, or someone's losing, their campaign is losing steam. Now, their headlines, their coverage, what they focus on, all of that is partly determined by what the pollsters are saying publicly and indeed privately. So pollsters don't just measure a general election campaign, they actually help determine its direction, if you like, and therefore its outcome. Now, there's always been critics of polling. A meme, which is often perhaps confusingly shared by some left-wingers because it's from a right-wing columnist, Peter Hitchens, put it like this: opinion polls are a device for influencing public opinion, not a device for measuring it. Crack that, and it all makes sense. Now, let's think about that a little bit. There's one polling company, YouGov, that's come in for particular scrutiny, not least because it was co-founded by Nadim Zahawi, who's now a Tory cabinet minister and indeed a leading candidate to replace Boris Johnson should he fall. But there's always been reasons to be skeptical about criticisms of the polling industry, not least the idea that it could ever be manipulated for political ends. After all, polling companies do depend on trust. They've got numerous lucrative media and corporate clients who pay them a huge amount of money. And if it turns out the data they supply is inaccurate or in any way compromised, they risk instantly tanking their entire business. Now, this brings me to a thread posted on Twitter by a former senior YouGov employee called Chris Curtis. In this thread, he details his experience of the 2017 election campaign from the vantage point of a pollster. Now, he discusses the sudden shift to Labour in the election, which at the time seemed too incredible to believe as a pollster, not least on the morning of the Manchester bombing. We all remember that horrific day, which showed Labour and the Tories pulling even. Now, that polling was understandably spiked when the campaign was paused. Now, he actually wondered, given the shift to Labour in the general election campaign, if he'd been hacked, YouGov had been hacked by nefarious actors to make it look better for Labour than it actually was. Then what happened? I think this becomes very, very interesting. They then had something called an MRP poll. It's a kind of statistical model which is supposed to be more accurate than conventional polling. Now, that showed what YouGov polling, standard polling, would have done, but it wasn't released. But first publicly conjured up the prospect of a hung parliament. This got a massive backlash at the time during the middle of a general election campaign, because at the time, the idea, based partly on the public polling, that Labour had any chance of a hung parliament seemed completely fantastical in the main. There was this huge backlash and, the ridicule, if you like, of YouGov in this whole thing. So rather than doing what we should have done, pointing out traditional polls was showing the gap, he says, was narrowing dramatically, and this is something to be taken seriously, it was new experimental methodology that showed it, and it was therefore dismissed. Now, you can kind of understand that. It's a new statistical model. It shows something which is out of sync with most polling. Maybe it's not reliable. But crucially, this is what happened. Nadim Zahawi, previously mentioned, now a Tory cabinet minister, then a senior Tory MP, rang up the CEO of YouGov and said he would call for his resignation if their model was wrong, and that therefore everyone at YouGov would now lose their jobs. So what happens next? Then Chris Curtis alleges that the polling and coverage from YouGov was essentially manipulated by omission. Because if we remember, let's just recall, there was the debates that Jeremy Corbyn took in, which did play a big role in shifting people's opinion.
I would just say this, since Amber Rudd seems so confident that this is a country at ease with itself. Have you been to a food bank?
Now, according to Chris Curtis, a poll after a big debate in which Jeremy Corbyn took part in found that Corbyn won by a country mile, and that 1 in 4 Tory voters thought he was the best. However, despite having written the story and designed the charts, we were banned from releasing the story because it was too positive about Labour. Just think about this. Think about this very carefully. After a senior Tory MP, co-founder of YouGov, rings up and threatens to get the CEO of YouGov fired and left everyone at YouGov now in fear of their jobs, YouGov suppressed data that was favourable to Labour. And then it gets worse. Curtis says there were a few minor methodology changes for the final poll, which increased the Tory lead after pressure from high-ups and despite protests from those of us who thought it wasn't okay. This is a massive scandal. We're talking about allegations of wanton political interference in a polling industry to suppress polling that was favourable to the opposition, which would have fueled a narrative at the time that Corbyn was the one with momentum, that he was winning unpersuaded voters over, that even Tory voters thought he was winning, or a huge chunk of them thought he was winning in debates. And it speaks to wider manipulation of polling data. Now, what does this tell us? It tells us, again, it emphasizes the limits of what is often called liberal democracy, how important institutions in the functioning of democracy are compromised and influenced to serve the interests of dominant political interests. Now, these are allegations. We need to hear from YouGov their side of the story. They need to clarify publicly whether this is true. And if it isn't, they need to provide clear evidence. Otherwise, Chris Curtis is a very reliable source, a former senior YouGov staffer. What reason would he have to publicly, in a sense, go to war with his former employee, which is, after all, a big corporate institution, very well connected, co-founded, as we've established, by a very prominent conservative? It's quite something to go in like this so publicly. I doubt many of us would want to do this unless we thought we had our backs covered. So YouGov better supply some pretty compelling evidence. But this is why you should be skeptical always about the facts or what you are told are cast iron facts by the powerful, even if you fear being ridiculed for doing so. Because this really underlines the limits, if you like, of liberal democratic institutions. The polling industry, as I've set out, is an important institution in a democracy. And if results have been manipulated for political ends, this raises very profound questions. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, support us on Patreon. I'll see you soon.